the unknown rival who forced a market revolution. It began with a competitor no one took seriously, a tiny newcomer operating far from the spotlight, dismissed by analysts, ignored by executives, and barely acknowledged in industry reports. Yet behind the quiet facade was a force preparing to shatter long-trusted assumptions and push an entire market toward a revolution it didn't know it needed. To understand why this story still echoes today, we have to return to a time when the dominant players felt unshakable. Their models were proven. Their products were standardized. Their marketing budgets dwarfed anything a newcomer could dream of. They believed the market was locked, predictable, and safely under their control. But beneath that confidence lay a dangerous oversight. They no longer paid attention to the edges. Our story begins on those very edges, where a small team, working without prestige or resources, noticed a shift the giants had missed. Customers were asking for flexibility, transparency, and speed that legacy providers couldn't deliver. The giants believed these requests were niche, temporary, unprofitable. But to the rival, they were signals of an opportunity the market had silently prepared. The rival's first product was unimpressive at a glance. Limited features, modest design, a fraction of the capabilities found in established offerings. But what it lacked in polish, it made up for in purpose. It addressed frustrations the giants had ignored, delivering solutions that felt immediate, human, and refreshingly simple. Early adopters found it almost by accident, and once they tried it, they didn't go back. Then came the moment that marked the beginning of a shift no one recognized yet. A mid-tier client quietly switched from a legacy provider to the rival. Not because of price, not because of aggressive sales tactics, but because the rival listened, fixing issues within days that the giants hadn't addressed in years. It was a tiny loss for the industry leaders, barely noticeable in their quarterly reports. But it was the first domino. As word spread among smaller clients, the rival began accumulating momentum. Slowly, quietly, consistently. And in those early days, the giants didn't react at all. They didn't see a threat. They saw a curiosity. What they didn't see was a movement forming directly beneath them, one that would soon tip the balance of the entire market. Momentum gathered in places the giants never bothered to look. Small businesses, independent operators, niche organizations, groups long overlooked by established players, began adopting the rival's product in growing numbers. They shared stories of faster support, simpler workflows, and a company that treated them as partners rather than accounts. These weren't glamorous endorsements. They were practical, sincere, and rooted in experiences that resonated with anyone frustrated by the giants' rigidity. Inside legacy boardrooms, early warnings went unnoticed. Reports mentioning the rival were filed under emerging but insignificant. Analysts described the newcomer as too small to matter. Every metric leadership relied on reinforced the illusion of stability. Revenue held. Market share appeared stable. Long-term contracts provided a cushion against unexpected shifts. Confidence hardened into complacency. Meanwhile, the rival kept evolving. They released updates weekly. They scrapped features that users found confusing and rebuilt them within days. They adjusted pricing models based on real feedback, not outdated assumptions. Their agility wasn't a strategy. It was survival. And that survival instinct gave them an edge the giants couldn't replicate. The turning point came when the rival introduced a breakthrough capability, something that solved a long-standing pain point customers had complained about for years. The giants had dismissed the idea as too complex, too expensive, or too insignificant to prioritize. But the rival had been listening. They delivered the feature with speed that shocked early adopters, and the market began paying attention. Suddenly, conversations shifted. Small forums buzzed with comparisons. mid-sized companies debated whether to pilot the new solution. Industry newsletters quietly highlighted the rival's surprising progress. And one by one, cracks began appearing in the giant's narrative of absolute control. Inside the giant companies, reactions varied. Some teams dismissed the development as noise. Others grew uneasy. A few forward-thinking employees tried raising alarms, noting unusual migration patterns among niche customer segments. But their warnings were lost in layers of process and presentations designed to prioritize good news. Then, something unexpected happened. A major regional customer, the kind legacy companies assumed would never leave, announced they were running a trial with the rival. Their reason was simple. They wanted a provider that treated them like a priority, not an obligation. This triggered the giant's first real internal debate. Could the rival scale? Were they stable? Would large clients even consider them? Leadership reassured themselves with old assumptions. Newcomers burn out, demand plateaus, customers return to the safety of big brands. But outside their walls, a new reality was taking shape. Each customer that joined the rival felt not like a transaction, but like part of a movement. The rival wasn't growing by force. It was growing by invitation. And as that invitation spread, a shift in the market's gravitational pull quietly began. A shift the giants were about to feel far more directly. The first true shockwave hit when the giant lost a contract it believed was untouchable. For years, the client had been locked into a comfortable rhythm, predictable renewals, long-term agreements, and a relationship built more on habit than satisfaction. So when the contract came up for review, leadership considered it a mere formality. But this time, the client didn't sign. They wanted to explore alternatives. And when word leaked that the rival was on their shortlist, panic rippled quietly through the giant's upper ranks. Meetings were called. Urgent emails circulated. Analysts scrambled to understand what had changed. Yet the answer was simple. The rival had finally crossed from the fringe into the conversation. They weren't a curiosity anymore. They were a contender. Inside the rival's modest office, the atmosphere was the opposite of panic. It was disbelief. The team had grown accustomed to working in the shadows, building features late into the night, celebrating small victories no one else cared about. Now, they were being considered by clients who once dismissed them outright. The possibility didn't inflate their confidence. It sharpened their focus. As the evaluation process began, the giant assumed its size, reputation, and infrastructure would overshadow the rival's progress. But during the trial period, something unexpected happened. The rival adapted faster. They fixed issues in hours, while the giant took weeks. They customized workflows to match the client's needs instead of forcing the client to adapt. They listened. The trial exposed a truth the giants had forgotten. Responsiveness beats reputation when customers feel unheard. Inside the giants' headquarters, the mood darkened. Leadership demanded explanations. How could a newcomer with a fraction of their resources outperform them? Teams pointed to bureaucratic bottlenecks, legacy systems, and rigid processes that had once been strengths but had calcified into liabilities. Some blamed the market for changing too fast. Others blamed customers for being too demanding. Few admitted the real issue. They had stopped evolving. Meanwhile, the rival's success fueled another shift. Industry influencers who previously ignored them now began discussing their approach. Iterative development, transparent communication, and a philosophy of treating every customer, big or small, as essential. The rival didn't chase scale. They chased alignment. That alignment became a magnet. Within months, mid-sized clients who felt overlooked by the giants quietly reached out for consultations. Forums filled with recommendations. Small communities praised the rival's reliability and flexibility. Each conversion was small, but together they formed a rising tide. The giants felt the tide before they understood it. A dip in renewal rates, a surge in migration inquiries, support tickets revealing issues clients no longer tolerated. The signals were faint but unmistakable. Loyalty was shifting. The tipping point arrived when a second major client defected, publicly. They credited the rival with solving operational problems the giants had ignored for years. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Analysts revised forecasts. Competitors reevaluated their strategies. And for the first time, the giants openly acknowledged the rival as a threat. Inside the rival's office, the team didn't celebrate. They braced themselves. They understood what was coming. Attention, scrutiny, pressure, imitation. The battle for the market had officially begun. The giants reacted with a force they hadn't used in years. Emergency task forces assembled. Consultants were hired. Roadmaps were rewritten overnight. For the first time in a decade, the dominant players felt the ground shifting beneath them, and the shift had a name. The rival they once ignored was now shaping their every decision. But while the giants scrambled to copy features and modernize interfaces, they still moved with the weight of their own history. Every change required approvals. Every improvement demanded negotiations. Every update passed through layers of committees built for an era when competition moved slowly. By the time their responses reached the market, the rival had already iterated again. Inside the rival's office, the stakes had changed dramatically. With new attention came new expectations. Larger clients brought more complex requirements. Prospects demanded reliability at a scale the rival had never handled before. Investors called, offering funding that could accelerate growth or distort it. The team faced a new challenge: how to expand without losing the agility that made them special. Pressure intensified as demand exploded. Servers strained. Support teams stretched thin. Engineers worked through nights to keep pace with the incoming flood of requests. Growth brought opportunity, but it also brought danger. One major outage could derail the momentum. One misstep could give the giants the opening they desperately needed. The rival's founder gathered the team for a late-night meeting. The room was exhausted, but determined. They reviewed the challenges ahead: scaling infrastructure, strengthening security, refining onboarding, building systems resilient enough to serve thousands without sacrificing the responsiveness that attracted early users. It was clear that the next phase of the journey couldn't rely on improvisation alone. The company needed structure, not restriction, direction, not drift. And so, the rival made a pivotal choice. Instead of trying to match the giant's scale, they focused on mastering precision. They built systems that scaled only where it mattered. They automated the pain points that slowed them down. They expanded teams thoughtfully, choosing people who understood the mission rather than chasing headcount for appearances. Growth became intentional, not reactionary. Outside their walls, the market transformed. Customers began demanding the same level of responsiveness from every provider. Industry standards shifted. Conferences highlighted speed and transparency as the new currency of competition. Analysts rewrote predictions. What started as a small disruption had reshaped expectations across the entire sector. The climax came a year later when the rival landed a landmark contract, one of the largest in the industry's history. Not because they were the biggest, not because they offered the lowest price, but because they demonstrated something the giants had forgotten how to show: a genuine commitment to solving problems with clarity, humility, and urgency. The giants didn't collapse. They adapted, slowly and reluctantly, shedding old habits as the market forced their hand. But they no longer defined the future. They followed it. As the rival grew, the team understood the deeper truth of their journey. They hadn't won by overpowering their competitors. They had won by outlistening them, by seeing the frustrations others dismissed, by betting on simplicity in a world obsessed with complexity. The revolution they sparked didn't come from dominance, it came from relevance. And long after the dust settled, the story became a lesson whispered through boardrooms and startup incubators alike. Never underestimate the force of those who build where others refuse to look. Sometimes the insight that reshapes an entire market begins in the smallest, quietest corner of the map, the